Good morning. I am holding the phone super close to me because I can't speak loudly. Because if I speak loudly, I get winded easier. So I did want to hop on here and give an update. This is my first time actually sitting outside of my house since I had surgery on Monday. So that's a win, always a win. Just a second here, my phone is crazy. Okay, let's see. So how are you? I don't know who's hopping on because Facebook doesn't like to tell me things anymore, but that's totally okay. I just wanted to check in really quickly because I know a whole bunch of my friends here have been praying for me and reaching out to check on me, and I have not been taking phone calls because about as long as I'm going to talk today is probably as long as I can handle talking before I get winded. So since I can't really answer everybody's call, I feel bad just taking one and then messaging everybody. So I figured I'd just hop on here pretty quickly and kind of share an update and a little encouragement and then go back to sleep. Or go lay down again. Nope, no you don't. My dog saw a dog. Let's see if he calms. Let's make sure he's calm. Yep, you stay up here. No. Nope, he's crying. You hear him? You hear him crying? No you don't. Yep, he's gonna cry. He's a crybaby. He saw somebody walking their dog, so come here, boy. Come here. It's okay. It's all right. Want to say hello to all your friends on Facebook? Say hello, all your fans. Okay, so a quick update as far as surgery. I had surgery on Monday, and to be honest with you, I was really dreading it. I was dreading the recovery process because recovering from surgery hasn't been the best experience for me in the past. I've had lots of trouble. I don't know who hopped on, but hello. Facebook doesn't tell me, so if you drop a comment, I'll say hi. So I was kind of dreading the recovery process, especially because I was like, oh, I'll just go back to work in a week. And then my surgeon's like, no, you won't. You're going to take 2 weeks at least because you're going to be exhausted all the time. And while I have definitely been exhausted, I am doing a lot better than I thought I would be. So that's a huge blessing. And it reminded me of something that I shared a couple of years ago, which in turn reminded me of some scripture, which was kind of funny, right? Because to be honest with you, last time I had surgery in June of last year, there's no way I could have hopped on a Facebook Live 4 days post-op. There's absolutely no way. I was in tremendous pain. I was really grateful to have friends that stayed with me and cared for me and my family while I was recovering because I was just a mess. I couldn't, to think about sitting outside of my house 4 days post-op last year, it was just this is not going to happen. My elbow slipped, sorry. It was just this is not happening. I was still in tremendous pain. So far this time, knock on wood, and thanks for all the prayers and well wishes that everybody's been sending and checking up on me. But definitely thanks to those prayers, I am doing so much better than I thought that I would be doing. And I've actually, been able to get up and walk around and do all that kind of stuff, which of course they encourage you in the hospital to do. But overall, this has just been a better experience for me, and I'm grateful for that. And I know that that's in part because so many people were praying for my recovery and praying that everything would go well. For the surgery itself, I had a few messages of questions. People asked me, what kind of surgery did you have, all that kind of stuff. I had a what's called a total hysterectomy, not a radical hysterectomy, which is where they take everything, including ovaries, out. But a total hysterectomy, which is where they take the cervix, uterus, and fallopian tubes out, but they leave the ovaries, which means that your body still produces hormones, so you don't go into early menopause, which was, obviously a concern pre-operatively, that once they get in there they might have to do it, but thankfully everything went as planned and they were able to leave those bad boys in there, which means no early menopause for me. Yay. But just going through this process, I thought about how stressed I was out before surgery. I was so stressed out about the surgery itself and going under the knife for the second time in about a year, and this is super stressful. And just looking at where I am now and saying, man, this is crazy, because a few years ago, I remember when my family moved in 2019 to Tennessee, there were a few boxes that we packed, and I kind of left them for the last boxes to unpack. And I did the same thing again when we moved from our apartment to our home that we own now. And it always works that way, right? Like there's those boxes like, oh God, that box is going to be a hassle to unload. Or like, I really don't want to have to pick up that box because it's probably super heavy. It's huge. And I thought about that and like, oh, when I shared in 2019, it was like, sometimes it's that big box, what you think is overwhelming. And then once you start doing it, you're like, oh, well, this wasn't as heavy as I thought it was. It wasn't as big a deal as I thought it was. And not that surgery isn't a big deal, but definitely the recovery, I was dreading that. And it has been 10 times easier than I thought it would be. So that's a huge blessing. And I definitely consider myself to be blessed because I know not everybody has as great an experience when they have to have surgeries like this. So I am certainly blessed. But it did remind me of something that I wanted to share with you guys because of the lesson that God's been teaching me over the past year or so, which is about learning how to rest, which is hard for me, to be honest with you. Feeling halfway decent now, like I already was like ready to call my doctor and say, hey, you think you can release me to go back to work? But I know that the doctor will not release me, right now anyway, because I still need a little bit more rest and healing. I still get winded, like I said. When I talk too much, I feel like I'm running out of breath more easily than usual. So I thought about that, and I thought about just the lesson that God's been teaching me over the last year. And I don't know if this is maybe a lesson for you, or maybe it's not, or maybe it's just, like something that you don't, that we don't think about often. But like, we live in this hustle culture, this culture that says that we have to push and work hard and do more and do more and do more all the time. But I think sometimes we mix that up with our belief system and God. Like, I have to do more in order for God. Hey, I don't know who joined, but hello. Facebook's not telling me if you say hi, I'll say hi back. But sometimes we mix that up with like, oh, well, I have to do more. Even, like for God, like I have to be more active, or I have to work harder, or, do more and more and more. And we get burned out that way, right? Like we allow ourselves. And that's definitely something that's happened to me this year. It's a lesson that I've had to relearn, of slowing myself down and realizing that being busy, hey, Sandra, being busy is not equal to, like that work being valuable. And so sometimes rest is valuable. And I think of the story of Mary and Martha, where, Martha was busy, but Jesus honored Mary because she sat at his feet and was there resting. And Martha was frustrated by that. And I think I've definitely been frustrated by that. I've watched other people who maybe don't hustle quite the same way I do, like who don't just have that in them, because I have always been a person that pushes myself to my limits. And I've said, man, sometimes it feels like they're getting a little further ahead than I am. Why? And sometimes there's a little bit of jealousy that sits in there. Not jealousy for like, oh, I wish I could be like them, or any, like wishing harm upon anybody else, but just in like, man, like some people just get lucky, and sometimes I'm not that person. But even just sitting on this side of surgery and realizing I'm doing as well as I am, I realize that that's definitely not true, right? Like I definitely have the blessing of God on my life, just to be able to come out from a surgery like that and be sitting in front of you and able to talk and breathe, and not being stuck in a bed like I was last year when I had surgery. And so that's a huge blessing, and I realize and recognize that. But I think part of that has been because I have learned the real message behind what Jesus talks about in Matthew 11 verses 28 to 30. And that's what I want to share with you. A lot of us know the scripture from the King James Version or New King James Version, and it says, come to me all who are weary, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, because my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And sometimes I don't think we really get the whole scope of that message from that translation. So I wanted to share with you, I've shared with you guys before how my favorite translation of the Bible is the Message. But I wanted to read from that because there's something really powerful in there that's not listed quite the same way in other versions. And it really spoke to me today, and it reminded me of that time where I'm like, man, there's always that thing that you think is going to be so huge, and you get through it and you're like, wow, I made it through that, and that wasn't half as difficult or complicated as I thought it might be. And But in any case, I'm going to go ahead and read that in the Message translation. It's Matthew 11, verses 28 to 30. It says, "Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me and get away with me. You will recover your life." I just want to stop for a second there before I keep going. A lot of us think that recovery requires us to force things. Hey, Ms. Morales, it's good to see you. It requires that I have to do more, right? When we think about recovery in the human sense, hey, Kathy, good to see you. When we think of recovery in the human sense, we think of like physical therapy. I'm like, I have to work at this. I have to push harder. I have to stretch myself. And those things are good. But they're good in the time that they're supposed to be good. It's, there's a time and a place for everything, including complete and total rest. And that's where I am right now. But it's funny. It says, get away with me and you will recover your life. A lot of times we get so busy with work, whether it's ministry work or just work in general or life, and we think we're living, but what's actually happening is life is passing us by entirely because we are so consumed with the work that we are not thinking about the life that he promised us. And what he says is, you will recover your life. And I think that's there and spoken in that way for a particular reason. I'm going to keep reading. It says, I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. And I want to stop there really quick. Like Jesus said, watch how I do it. How did Jesus do it? There are scriptures very clearly in the Word of God where it says several times that Jesus got away. He went to the mountains. He went to pray. He went to rest. He was sleeping. When the storm came that all the disciples were scared of, where Jesus said, peace be still, guess what Jesus was doing? He was sleeping. He was resting, right? Because he understood that God had him and he didn't have to keep his wheels turning all the time in order for things to work out, because God was in control of that. And I think that's a lesson we forget sometimes, like, to remember that we are not quite as strong as God is, that we could, do more than he can. If Jesus can rest, surely I can. And then the rest of this is what really stood out to me. It says, learn the unforced rhythms of grace. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. The unforced rhythms of grace. That's what really stood out to me today. The unforced rhythms of grace. Why? Because grace, true grace, we don't have to fight for it, right? It's a gift. It's freely given to us. And it's one of those things that we have to freely give to others and to ourselves, right? We have to be active in thinking about grace and think about extending grace, not even just to other people, but to ourselves. And that's a hard thing. It's hard when you come from a culture of constantly moving and hustling and working hard to give yourself grace. Hey, Lucy. It's hard to think about, I can rest. I don't have to figure out how the storm is going to be calmed because Jesus is in the boat with me. And if he's resting, then that means I can rest. And if nothing else, I just want to remind you today that the unforced rhythms of grace is just a reminder that he's in the boat with you. He's in the boat. And if he's calm and resting, that means you can too. If he's not looking at you and saying, oh, you haven't come so far yet, which he's not, maybe you can give yourself a little grace. If he's not looking at that person in your life that maybe you're struggling with, they should have accomplished more by now. They should have done more. They should have pushed more. I expected them to be further along in life. Sometimes our children, we look at that way and say, man, I wish you would have, not to them maybe, but like, man, I thought I taught you how to be a hard worker. I taught you how to do this, A, B, and C. And definitely ourselves. I think it's easier for us to extend grace to other people than it is for us to extend grace to ourselves, because we look at our lives and say, I should be further along. But this is about the unforced rhythms of grace, about the grace of understanding that God knows where you are right now in this moment. And he gives you permission to rest. He gives you not only permission, but grace to say, watch how I do it. If I can be asleep, if Jesus can be asleep in the boat during the biggest storm of those disciples' life, and he could rest during that, surely you can rest in knowing that he's got your storm covered, just as I am learning how to rest during this period of recovery. And there will be a time where I have to push, hey Aggie, where I will have to push myself and go back to physical therapy and do all of those things that are necessary for recovery. But in this moment, what is necessary for me, paused itself, sorry. But what is necessary for me, and what I think might be necessary for some of you too, is to give yourself grace and to know that, no, you don't have it all together. I don't either. I still struggle, right? Like, I see my kitchen with dishes in the sink right now, and everything inside me wants to just get up and go wash the dishes, but I know that that's not what I need to be doing right now. What I need to be doing is resting. What I need to be doing is giving myself grace and giving my husband grace, because he's managing an entire household that we normally manage together. And so maybe the dishes will sit for a little bit longer than they normally do. But it's those unforced rhythms of grace. Grace is never forced. We never have to push grace. It's just understanding that exactly what grace is unforced. It's just saying, okay, I don't have it all together, but you're not done with me yet, God. And if I can just learn how to rest in this moment with you, then maybe that's part of my process. And maybe it's part of your process too. So I'll read the scripture all together again one more time, and then I'm going to go, because it is my time to rest and give grace to myself and take a nap. Are you tired? Are you worn out? Burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. Keep company with me, and you'll learn how to live freely and lightly. That's what I hope for you, friends, today, that you will learn how to live freely and lightly by learning how to extend that unforced rhythm of grace to yourself. Hey, Crystal, to yourself, to your loved ones. And understand that, like, even if you're in the midst of that storm, just like, you know, I am in the middle of healing. Jesus, he slept on the boat, guys. He slept during the storm on the boat. He understood the unforced rhythm of grace. And my hope for you today is that you will also understand that, and that you will learn to rest in the storm, because he's got something for you on the other side of that. And you may not see the whole picture now, but the more you rest in him, the more you give grace to yourself and to others, the more you'll start to see the whole picture, and it will come together, and the blessing will be on the other side of it. Just like it has been for me, time after time after time. I'm going to go ahead and get some more rest. I am, like I said, surgery was super successful for those who came on late. They took, it was a hysterectomy for those who were asking. They took everything out except for my ovaries, so I'm not going to early menopause, thank God. But I am, grateful that I am doing a lot better than I was last year when I had surgery, a lot further along already, as far as, pain, not being in as much pain and that kind of thing. So I am learning that unforced rhythm of grace, and I'm also learning that even though I feel okay, I'm not going to do what I did last time. As soon as I felt okay, I started doing things. I'm going to continue resting because my body requires rest. And I hope that, if nothing else, that I have encouraged you to take that time, hey Tiffany, to rest yourself, because there is a blessing in that. When you have a chance, go ahead and read that for yourself, Matthew chapter 11, 28 to 30, and read it in the Message translation. It's much more impactful for me, and that's why I read it over and over again. I wrote it on this little thing, which is why you keep seeing me hold it. I wrote it down because my Bible has letters that are like this tiny, which are fine when I'm like reading it for myself, but it's not fine when I have to be like this close to it and to read it to you guys. So I write it down for myself. But I'm gonna go lay down, get some rest. And I encourage you to do the same. If it's not physical rest, if you got to work and do something today, that's cool. but rest your soul and rest your mind in knowing that he's got you. And, you know, start to ask him to show you those unforced rhythms of grace, because there's a lot of blessing there for you if you will rest in him and allow him just to bring the healing to you. Okay, guys, I'm gonna go. My dog is taking a nap on the porch, I think, or he's cranky. I don't know. He was mad at me because I wouldn't play ball with him yesterday. Whatever, he'll learn to rest too. All right, thank you all for your prayers. Again, please continue to keep me in prayer as I continue to rest. I am due to go back to work on the 27th of September, so still a lot of rest waiting for me here. And I will get an update. If you don't get a direct message, or if I don't answer your phone call, please, you know, be considerate that I am, I get winded easily, so I will probably text you before I answer a phone call from you. And that doesn't mean that I don't want to talk to you. It's just I get winded. It takes a lot out of me to talk. So I'm done talking for today. I'm gonna go lay down. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you're all blessed. And thank you again for all of your prayers as I've been on this journey. And I will continue to keep you posted. Bye. Be blessed.